These are the war demons. They are, generally speaking, combative. Captured monsters are brought into the castle and they thusly devote themselves day and night to combat training. Or so the story goes. Chances are, they're all just hungry for blood and slaughter. Originally human, apostles are creatures that were consumed by extraordinary obsession. Causality thusly granted them with a bailet to use in their moments of greatest anguish, and by sacrificing what was most precious to them, they were able to join the ranks of demonkind. And upon doing so, their personalities became more animalistic and blood-craven. Their insatiable desire to give in to their base urges, whether it be fornication, killing, or torturing, or a mix of all the above, makes them less empathetic and less human. There are those, however, that possess a remarkable level of discipline, and they are able to suppress their ravenous tendencies. In fact, if we didn't know any better, we wouldn't suspect them of being apostles whatsoever. Such apostles would include Locus, Grumbeld, and Irvine. One important characteristic that we'll notice about each apostle is that their appearance and power reflects their inner desire and personality. What they become on the outside is a reflection of their inner soul. And I would like to use the rest of the video to explore this relationship and rate each apostle based on their aesthetics and powers. Now, this will be similar to my video ranking the weapons of Berserk, so the grading will be a bit harsh. I only do that to provide better context for where everyone stands in the hierarchy. And without further ado, let's begin with Rosine. Now, Rosine wished to live among the elves, so her appearance took on that of an elf. She had a very whimsical side, as expected of a child, and used it to create a paradise for herself. However, being an adolescent, her conception of war and pain were warped, leading her to create a colony of indoctrinated children that murdered each other relentlessly. Her abilities of enhanced speed and flight were pretty badass, and the fact that she had a two-phase transformation is really unique. Besides Ganishka, I don't think any other apostle has a two-phase transformation, so that's pretty cool. She also has the ability to create pseudo-apostles, and is fast enough to create sonic booms. And let's be honest, during the Lost Children's chapters, she gave Guts all he can handle. So given all her powers and her unique design, I'd give her an 8.7. Locus is a cold, calculated man who carries himself with a high sense of honor. His centaur-like apostle form, as such, has a silvery metal sheen, and it just exudes nobility and integrity. There's no waste or fluffery about his release form, and it's very sharp and to the point. Though centaurs are often depicted as savage beasts, they can exude wisdom and kindness. It embodies a duality of sorts, that of an untamed nature and that of a teacher, like in the case of Chiron, a notable figure in Greek mythology. Locus's weapon of choice is a large lance, which he can use to impale approximately 10 Daka in one strike. In addition, the shield on his left arm takes on the appearance of the crescent moon, which plays into his moniker of the Moonlight Knight. All in all, it's a really cool form. That being said, the silver sheen is a bit too one-note for my taste. So ultimately, I give it a 7.7. The Snake Baron was an apostle that ruled over the town of Koka, and he ruled said town with an iron fist, using fear and brutality to assert his dominance. His transformed form looked like a bipedal cobra that possessed superhuman strength and speed. It's a cool look, don't get me wrong, but ultimately, it lacks the flair and the abilities of other apostles on this list. So I'm resolved to give it a 6.8. Grumbeld, the Great Flame Dragon, became famous defending against Tudor invasions. There's a whole backstory revealed about him in greater depth in this light novel, which, despite the bad reviews, isn't as bad as everyone makes it out to be. Even in his human form, Grumbeld is a towering man, and he possesses great strength and stamina. He wields a massive great hammer and a great shield cannon, and the great shield cannon is pretty unique. Not only can it repel a cannonball, but it contains two blades that can be used for offensive measures. In his release form, he's a colossal dragon with crystals covering his body. His crystalline body is incredibly sturdy, being able to withstand even cannon fire. And he can also breathe fire and whip his tail around for destructive attacks. I'd imagine his tough exterior is to keep people walled off, almost like a defense mechanism to keep his inner psyche safe. All in all though, it's a really spectacular form, and I think it's worthy of an 8.9. Now Borkov is an apostle that most people won't remember because of his namesake, but when I tell you what he did, you're immediately going to remember who he is. He's the apostle that bit off Guts' left arm during the eclipse. He resembles a large salamander with 6 legs. He's got a rather large mouth with his face protruding from his backside, and despite being a big, hulking creature, he's actually really quick. He possesses a club-like tail and has an armored hide with spikes coming out of it. He's essentially a gigantic tank of an apostle. We even saw him fighting in the Pandemonium Arena against a giant ogre. Now his strength, durability, and stamina are all off of the charts, but his design and attacks are a bit generic for my taste. So I'm gonna give him a 6.5. Roxas was exiled from the Kushan clan of the Bakuraka and has since turned into an apostle. Unlike the other apostles, his human form is quite the enigma. It resembles a man hiding under a black sheet. He can manipulate and contort his body in all sorts of ways, and he can even hide within Zod's wing without being noticed. He also has a predilection for wearing masks, and will even walk away from a battle if it gets broken. In his apostle form, he becomes much larger, and his cloak forms various tentacle-like appendages. When he flies through the air, the appendages take the shapes of wings, making him look like a demonic bat of sorts. While I really like the aesthetic, his powers are a bit lackluster for my taste. So I'm gonna give him a 7.4. Ganishka was the Kushan Emperor and one of, if not the most powerful apostles ever to exist. Remember, we're not counting the God Hand in this list, so he's probably the most powerful thing on this list. What's more, he's the only known apostle that openly defies the God Hand, and he underwent extreme measures in attempts to defeat them. His released form was a moisture-based fog manifestation resembling his visage. By gathering up wind and water elementals, he could project his astral body to produce a much larger mass of fog. In this form, he could generate lightning strikes that were powerful enough even to give Zod trepidation. The fog that he manifests can also cover huge swaths of land, such as the entire city of Windham. Now the fog is quite terrifying, but it's a thin veil that covers up the terrified man underneath, something Griffith exposed quite easily. This forced Kanishka to undergo a second transformation, his twice reincarnated form, otherwise known as Shiva. In this colossal form, Ganishka was capable of destroying cities in a mindless rage. He was also capable of creating grotesque pseudo-apostles from the troops he crushed beneath his feet. The form itself resembles a living tree, with large tentacles protruding outwards. He could also produce fire and had a connection to the astral realm. Of course, this all came at a cost, that being his own sanity. Overall, Ganishka's immensely powerful with some cool aesthetics to boot. I'm gonna give him a strong 8.6. The Count was an extremely cruel man that would torture and eat his own subjects. The dude literally ate Vargas's family right in front of his face. In his released form, he looks like a gigantic and demonic slug. He can burrow through the stone floor of his castle and can easily smash through stone pillars. He's incredibly durable and can also regenerate parts of his body, save for his head. He could also infect others with his own spawn, like Zondark, so as to amplify his strength, speed, and ability. Now in the original Japanese version, he refers to the spawn as his alter ego. And although he looks really cool and demonic, his powers are a little bit lackluster. I mean, he just kind of smashes stuff around. So I'm gonna give him a 7.1. The Egg of the Perfect World is a curious case. Unlike the other apostles, he didn't participate in needless bloodshed and debauchery. He could create his own pseudo-apostles, as in the case of the Great Goat and Mosgus. But ultimately, his main purpose was to reconstitute Griffith into a corporeal form, and he did this by means of self-sacrifice. Because of this, his design and offensive abilities are quite limited. He's incredibly fast, mind you, even evading Skull Knights in their little exchange. But at the end of the day, he just doesn't hold up to the other, cooler apostles. So I'm gonna give him a 4.2. Irvine serves as the captain of the archers under the reborn Griffith in the Band of the Falcon. Now Irvine is a quiet, introverted man who displays a level of tenderheartedness, something that we don't really see with the other apostles. His released form resembles a wolf-like creature. The bow becomes horns, and he uses his lower body to create arrows. His human-like features reside on the back end of the body, highlighting the fact that he's a follower and not a leader. His arrows are incredibly strong, taking out the likes of a cockatrice with only a single arrow. Overall, I really like his design, especially the green hues, so I'm gonna give this one an 8.2. Wyald was the leader of the Black Dog Knights, an army of convicted murderers and rapists. He was a libertine at heart, showing no moral principles or a sense of responsibility. Possessing ape-like features, Wyald lived through his base desires, only wanting to kill and rape. His released form takes on the appearance of a gigantic gorilla, where his tongue takes on the appearance of a massive schlong. Aside from the eyes on his head, he also has an eye on each shoulder and one in the middle of his chest. His cocky attitude and incredible strength allowed him to intimidate his foes with relative ease. And given that we know that he was a feeble old man prior to his transformation, we can surmise that he was probably bullied in his mortal days. It's a really cool design, and I think I'm going to give him a solid 7.6. The female apostle is the first apostle that we're introduced to in the series, and the first one killed for that matter. Not much is known about her, but she lures unsuspecting men in with her alluring beauty, and then transforms into an H.R. Giger-styled monster to kill them. The design alone is phenomenal, and she's one of the most iconic apostles ever seen in the series. So I'm going to give her an 8.0. Keeper of the Hounds was the first apostle killed by Guts' Dragon Slayer. Although he was relatively unknown in the manga, we learned more about his backstory in the 2016 anime. He was deemed ugly and inferior by his master, but the Count's daughter treated him with a level of kindness that he never experienced. His advances on her, however, were unreciprocated, leading him to activate a Beylit and sacrifice her to the God Hand. His released form looks like a demonic pig, with his human face where his chest should be. Overall, I'd give it a 6.3. Nosferatu Zod is a legend amongst the other apostles. Dude has been around for centuries, slaying thousands on the battlefield. He possesses an insatiable thirst for battle, eternally searching for someone who can match his strength. His released form is a gigantic minotaur with curved horns and wings on his back. The wings allow him to fly through the battlefield and slaughter numerous foes with ease. The goat hoofs along with the curved tail elicit images of a satanic figure. All in all, the design is simple, yet very terrifying. No matter how many times you see him in the manga, his presence makes you stop and appreciate him. And that's why I'm going to give him a very strong 9.4. Vlad Tepes is the main villain of the Berserk prototype, a short story released in 1988. He cares nothing for human life, and takes pleasure in torturing human beings. His apostle form is somewhat similar to Zod's, in that he grows horns and has cloven feet. I'm sure Mira wanted to incorporate a Minotaur-like apostle in the Berserk universe, and use Vlad Tepes as a rough template. Obviously, Zod turned out way better aesthetically in my mind, but I still really like the design on Vlad Tepes, which is why I'm still going to give him a 7.3. Charles is an apostle exclusive to the Berserk PS2 game. He grew up in a noble family along with his younger sister. They lived happily together until a fire destroyed their house and killed both of their parents. Wounded and desperate for his old life, Charles grabbed onto a Beylit and thusly made a sacrifice. Upon returning to the mortal realm, he used his illusory powers to recreate the manor that he had lost, along with his sister, who he believed survived the fire. Though it's never stated, it's implied that Charles sacrificed his own sister to become an apostle, which means one of two things happened. He either sacrificed her unknowingly, or blocked out those memories since it was too painful to remember. Now his release form is somewhat similar to Rosine's. It's a gigantic insect with wings and an antenna. It's a little bit different though. Each wing has a gigantic red eyeball that stares at his opponent. He can fly through the air and uses his antennas like a pair of whips. It's a really cool form, don't get me wrong, but it just kind of feels like a generic version of Rosine's form. So I'm going to give it a 6.7. And the last apostle I'm going to talk about is the main antagonist of the Berserk Dreamcast game, that being Balzac. Now, Balzac was a considerate ruler who cared for his people. Desperate to save his sick wife, he used a mandragora plant to stop her body from aging. Unfortunately, it ravaged her mind. This, along with the responsibilities of taking care of the kingdom, eventually propelled him to turn into a bloodthirsty dictator. He would later get mortally wounded by Guts, and would thusly activate a Beylit to revitalize himself. And I gotta say, his apostle form is pretty wild. That being said, I really like it. It's a chimera-type creature with the head of a cat, dog, fish, and I don't even know what the hell this thing is. His humanoid body is affixed to the top, and he even has wings to boot. Now, he has some similarities to the Count in that he sacrificed his wife to become an apostle. But all in all, I really like this design. It's one of the most unique designs I've ever seen for a Berserk apostle, and I'm going to give it a very strong 8.5. And that's it, guys. That's every known apostle in the Berserk universe. Now, I didn't include lesser-known apostles that only showed up for like one instance or something like that, or pseudo-apostles. That's why the Great Goats and Mosgus didn't make it into this list. They're not true apostles. In addition, Godhand members were not included since they're, part of a different category entirely. But with that said, guys, tell me what you guys thought of this ranking, and I'll catch you on the flip side.